And hello, and welcome to Magical Journey. My name is Daniel Cahoon. I am your host, and you are watching me on my YouTube channel. I'd also like to encourage you to join me on Facebook with the Facebook group where you can find out all the local stuff going on with me, the new stuff going on, anything happening with our brand, and all updates for current and future shows. Also, you can get me on Spotify through the audio there. Today, I have a really special guest. I'm excited about today's show because we'll be talking with Lisa Thompson about being a contactee. A lot of you have not had this experience of being able to watch an interview with contactees. So come and join us, and I will bring Lisa to the stage. Hello.
Aloha, Daniel.
That's right. You are in Hawaii, so aloha. How are you doing?
I'm so happy to be here with you today and to share with you and your audience all about my
I,
experiences.
right. I'm excited today too, actually. This is a good topic and it's a nice spin on a subject that's sometimes perceived as not being so nice. So tell us a little bit about your how to contact you, where to find your content, and any other things that you would like to promote.
Thank you. So I do have a couple of different businesses. So I've got two different websites. The first one is Dr. Lisa J. Thompson, or you can get there through mysticmanta.com as well. And that's where I offer all of my healing services, my books, my oracle decks, my retreats, online classes, and I have a certification program in my healing modality. And then I also can be found at bigislandUFOtours.com, where I do a night sky watch using Generation 3 military night vision goggles here on the Big Island of Hawaii. And then the socials that I'm on, I am quite active on Facebook. I've got different pages and groups. I'm also on Instagram, and I have a YouTube channel as well, Connection to the Cosmos with Dr. Lisa Thompson.
Awesome. Wow, you have a lot going on there. And I like the idea of the tours. We talked about that the other day. So give us a little bit of an introduction to your experience and how you became a contact.
I would love to share that. So I have been an experiencer, contactee my entire life. But my first conscious memory of being taken onto a craft was when I was 15 years old. And so the situation was I was living on 20 acres outside of Olympia, Washington. And it was a nighttime experience where I was asleep in my bed. And so I don't know how I got into the craft, but all of a sudden I wake up and I'm inside of this spacecraft. And it was a small kind of shuttlecraft where it was just me and my ET guide. And I didn't have any fear about this whatsoever. Number one, he looked human. He presented himself as human, but I also felt like I knew him, like he was my friend, that I had met him a lot. So we start flying through space. And from the perspective of being inside of the craft, the walls looked completely transparent. Like you could just fully see out into space. You could see the darkness, the pinpoints of the starlight, the different gas layers as we were passing through, the beautiful colors of those. And so then we finally land where we were going. And when we got there, I asked him where we were. He said that we were inside of Io, one of Jupiter's moons. And then he started touring me around what looked like a hospital facility. So I could see into different rooms where people were being examined. Nothing scary, though, no probes or anything, but everyone looked really human. And so my question to him was, are you human? Is everyone here human? And he said, no, those of you that we brought here are human. We are not. We are humanoid, but we disguise ourselves because our form tends to scare you. So then my next question to him was, well, why are we here? Why am I here? And so what he said was that those of us that had been chosen to be brought there were being tested to see if something happened to Earth, if we could live in an environment like that or something similar. Now, this was back in 1988, where we're still in the Cold War, we're on the verge of World War III. So there really was a timeline potential where something massive could have happened. So then at the end of the tour, I asked him if I could see what he really looked like. Because as a kid, I was obsessed with animals, and the weirder, the better. So I didn't think I would have any fear of whatever his form was that might scare other people. So when he showed himself to me, he was about 7 feet tall. He had pure white skin, bigger than human eyes, but big dark eyes and very long red hair. And we're talking like fire engine red. And he had triangles, triads tattooed on his cheeks. So very extreme in his size and coloration. So I could see where there would be some fear factor maybe if someone's not used to that look, but completely benevolent. And so then I get returned back home, and I just remember laying in my bed with the vague memory of the spacecraft being out in my backyard. But I'm laying in my bed and I'm like, oh my God, that's the weirdest dream I've ever had. And so I just, for a few months, I thought it was just a dream. Now, with dreams, typically we forget details within the first 10 minutes of waking up, but I didn't forget the details of this. And so fast forward a few months later, I was reading Whitley Strieber's book, Communion, which is his book about his experiences of being taken by gray ETs. Now, at the end of his book, he's interviewing different people that had been taken, and they all have the same kind of gray ET experience that he's having, except for one guy had a completely different story where he was telling Whitley that he had been taken to a moon of Jupiter and told he was one of the chosen ones. And then Whitley made a little side comment, kind of sarcastically, I think. I hope it isn't Io. And as soon as I read that, I had head to toe chills. Tears started coming down my face. And so that was my body's way of telling me that was a real experience. That was not just a dream. Now, at the time, my mother and I were part of a spiritual school of enlightenment where we were learning about consciousness and higher dimensional reality and things outside of what we know here on this earth, extraterrestrials, fairies, all the things like that. And so when I realized that this was a real experience, I knew that if I told my mom, she would believe me. So I went and told her. She got very excited. And then a few days later, she introduced me to another student at our school who had formerly been very high government, who knew about the different ET races that our government knows about and even works with. And so I shared my story with him. And when I got to the part of describing him, he was like, I don't know that race. He said, but we don't know all of them. There are so many out there. But he said, you had a real experience. So not only did I have my own validation, with my clairsentience kicking in when I was reading Whitley's book, but then I had that external validation with someone who knows about these things. And so being a teenager, not having to go through my life thinking I was crazy or I made it up or it's just a dream, number one, was huge, but it also planted the seed for the work that I do now as a Galactic Ambassador and channeler. So that was my first kind of conscious experience. But what I know now, why they felt so familiar, why he seemed like my friend, is that I had been with them throughout my childhood. And I had been one of the ones in the kind of examination rooms. And again, they were just testing physiology, genetics, things, aspects like that over time. But because I was emotionally mature enough, when I was 15, I was a very wise teenager, but I was emotionally mature enough. And it was the right kind of perfect storm to be able to meet that other student at our school who could validate it. So I understand now why they let me remember that. So then fast forward to October of 2018. I was taking a psychic intuition class, and on the first night of class, our teacher led us through a meditative journey to meet a spirit guide that would help us get extra information. And I'm trained in past life regression therapy, and that's one of my modalities, although I'm reframing that to parallel life regression. But I had met different spirit guides, humans and animals, but this time was completely different, where I went to a completely different realm, and in front of me were the most beautiful blue skinned beings. They had large bald heads, bigger dark eyes, really skinny bodies, and just the most gorgeous blue skin. And they exuded the most pure love I have ever felt, more so than anything here on earth. And their message to me was, you are one of us, we are one of you, we are family. And we were to ask if they had a name that they wanted to be called. So there was a group of them, but there was one that was to the front, that was the spokesperson for them. And the name that was given to me was Uluru. And I was also given a gift of a quartz crystal. Now, at the time, they didn't tell me what the quartz crystal was, but they presented this crystal to me. So then I come out of this journey, and everyone's going around class sharing who their spirit guides are. Everyone's got normal humans, but I'm describing these blue beings who I didn't know like what race they were at the time. But there happened to be, synchronicity again. There happened to be a lady in class who knew some of the different ET races and what they look like. And so when I was describing them, she's like, that sounds like either the blue avians or the Arcturians. And so I had to go home and Google what those were, because I didn't know. But as soon as I saw the images of the Arcturians, it's exactly what I had seen in this journey. So, you can't make this stuff up. And
Right.
yeah. And so over the last 6 years now, I've really come to understand my connection with the Arcturians. And in 2022, they actually started channeling through me, first through writing and then vocal channeling. And then at the beginning of 2023, they're like, okay, now it's time to bring in additional groups that you are connected with. So in 2023, I led 13 different sessions, channeling sessions, to bring in 13 different higher dimensional galactic races. And that's just, I know, the tip of the iceberg for this connection that I have with our galactic family and guides.
Oh, that's pretty intense in itself. So let me ask you, you started off talking about um, your experience in 1988, which was the beginning of the Cold War era, or not the beginning, but in the Cold War. The climate then and the climate now is somewhat similar in the geopolitical world. Do you feel a connection between now and then in the work that you're doing?
Yeah. Well, now what you know, the 80s and 90s were very different in terms of the ET UFO phenomena and how people were perceiving it, because people like me were thought to be crazy tinfoil hat wearing, nut jobs. And now, because we have had some government disclosure, people are starting to wake up to, okay, yes, this is real phenomena. However, the way that the government, media, and Hollywood are trying to spin it is from a very fear-based perspective of, yes, it's real, but we have to perceive it as a military threat. And here's the difference. From my understanding, if any ET race wanted to take over and destroy us or destroy Earth, they could have done so way long ago, before we ever developed any kind of nuclear weapons or other, weapons of mass destruction. So really, the information that I get from them is that they are here to watch over Earth, to make sure that we don't destroy ourselves and destroy Earth. They are part of our family. We have up to 22 different ET races in our DNA. And so they have come, so they're kind of watching over like parents. Some are coming to just watch what's happening on Earth, because we're at a really interesting time where we are shifting. There are timelines of Earth that are shifting into fifth dimensional reality. And then other timelines where it's still the very polarized, fear-based world going on. And so one of the things that I'm here to do as a Galactic Ambassador is to share the perspective from them, from the higher perspective of, you get to choose which timeline reality you want to be a part of. because we create our reality. We get full conscious ability to do this when we know how to, because we're always creating our reality. It's just whether are you conscious about it or unconscious on autopilot. And so, really the people who perceive this as a threat, it's control, power, and money. That's really what it's about. And so, if anything were to ever present itself, there's this concept of a false flag invasion that is a real potential. And if this happens, it is not the ETs, it is the government. And so, it's to keep people in fear and being controlled.
Mhm. Mm. Wow. So that is one of the things that I'm curious about too, is the government spinning the narrative that they're spinning, even though they are in contact with some of these different groups of extraterrestrials. So what is what is the perceived purpose of that?
Of the government being in contact.
Yeah.
Basically, they are getting technology and
Mhm.
information from them, and they want to keep that secret.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing that I'm very curious about is because you had like this is some big things that happen along the way with you. Uh, how has this impacted your life as a contactee? What sorts of things? I guess my first big question is how did you evolve through all of
Well, so growing up in a spiritual school of enlightenment and metaphysical realm my entire life, I didn't have to go through all the religious dogma and unpacking the baggage of that. And I know that
it?
probably some of your listeners may be in that kind of religion kind of thing. So, no disrespect at all. But for me, I got to grow up knowing that I'm more than just this one earth life. I am multidimensional, and we are all connected to each other. We are all connected to source. And some people may call that God, some people call it the universe. I call it source. We are all connected to that, and including these ET beings. Everything is connected. And so for me, it's always, I've never had a fear based experience around this phenomena. I do know I'm also part of the Zeta Human Hybrid Program, which I can explain what that is in a little bit. But my connection with these beings has always been at a deep spiritual level. And it's really allowed me to really see things from their perspective. These are higher dimensional beings that can see things from a bird's eye view. And so where they operate, there is no polarization. So we are living in a third, fourth dimensional reality experience, shifting, sometimes dipping up into fifth dimensional reality. And so when we are in this third density, this third, fourth dimension, we experience polarity. That's just one of the laws of those dimensions. And so polarity is, the good, the bad, the positive, the negative, the black, the white. Well, that is simply a mechanism of evolution. We are meant to experience all sides of life, to be both sides of the coin, so that we can gain the wisdom and move on from that. So, really, from their perspective, there is no good or bad. Everything is just an experience, it's neutral. And so, because we do live more than just this one life, it's not, I'm born as Lisa and then that's it. That is not how this world really operates, how this universe operates. And so for me, really over the last 6 years of that deep communication with my Arcturians and then now my other groups, what I know now is that Uluru, who I was looking at in this journey, that is me as my Arcturian self. And that crystal that I gave to myself, that represents the healing energy that, so as an Arcturian, I'm a healer. Now, they don't get ill, they don't get disease because they are higher dimensional beings, and they don't experience that. But as a healer in that Arcturian realm, what I do is I send that healing energy from that realm down here to Earth Lisa, and it channels through my body, and it basically propagates out into the people that I'm around. It propagates into Mother Gaia. And so I am here to help heal the earth, help heal the people with this Arcturian energy. And as I'm channeling that energy, it actually heals my own body at the same time. Now, last year, the Syrians and the Mantis also came in with their healing energy. And so now, working with those three groups, because I am all of those groups, I'm pulling their higher vibrational energy through to make that healing even more powerful. And so really, it's I have grown into a more loving, compassionate, non-judgmental person, compared to when I was growing up, where I didn't like people. I wanted, I became a biologist. My PhD is in zoology and biology. I didn't want to work with people, and people hurt you. And I also had very strong opinions about politics and state of the world kind of thing. And what they told me very clearly 3 years ago was that, no, you need to stay neutral, stay out of that polarized reality. And I also had to do some deep dive healing of myself, because wherever we have stuck trauma or we feel guilt, shame, anything like that, then that festers and we judge other people. We judge because we're judging ourselves. And so really, the shift to fifth dimensional reality, the more that we can heal ourselves, clear out the shadows, the darkness, anything inside of us, then we can expand our hearts. We can come from a place of love, compassion, and empathy. We can more fully be in a state of joy and know that we're here to make known the unknown. That is what we're here to do on Earth. We're not here to wake up, go to work, have dinner and go to sleep. We're here to really evolve, grow, and learn new things, be on adventures.
Yeah. So with that, then, when you say that we're not here to do basically what we've been programmed to do as human beings, that it almost sounds like we're kind of in a sense of bondage to that program.
Well, it's a program that we agreed to be born into.
Mhm.
And again, everything that happens to us is at a soul level, agreement level. We have free will. And so whether you perceive it as a good or bad experience, that's something that you did sign up before you were born into this earth life to experience. And I have many examples for myself of situations that I created, contracts that I created where I'm like, ooh, that's a big one. Why'd I do that? But now I've come out on the other side even greater than I was, going through it. And um, so really, we are here. We choose to come to Earth School. Earth School is not for the faint of heart. And so when we are born here, we go through the tunnel of forgetfulness. We forget that we are actually connected fully to Source, that we are Source. Source is within us. Every single person, every single animal, every single plant, anything, the crystals, the rocks, everything has consciousness. And so, there are people starting to awaken to, oh God, there's more to this reality. And when you know that you are more than just, this human playing this role, you can start to play the game a little different, because Earth really is like a game. These are our avatars. The physical body is not who we are. We are a soul. And then this is kind of just the dream that we're experiencing at the moment, but it is not who we are. And so really when people start understanding that and consciously creating and focusing on what they actually want to create in their life, then magical things can happen. So yeah, I like your show, Magical Journey. Magical
Right.
journeys can unfold when you know this.
Right. Exactly. I like the way that you put how things are not good or bad. That's sort of how I explain, like when people ask me about witchcraft or magic, and I get questions about that a lot. Like they get confused when I tell them I don't like the idea of using terms like dark and light magic and stuff like that because it is you assume after labeling those things that it's the magic itself or the energy of that magic that's dark or light. When energy is neither dark or light, it's neutral, it's just energy. And it's your intentions that cause it to do whatever you ask it to do or program it. So I feel like that is kind of like the same principle in a way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we stop, like, again, judging what other people are doing, what their opinions are, what they think, and just allow people to live, allow them to be who they are. And even again, I know it's hard for a lot of people to wrap their minds around, thinking that, oh, well, if someone murders something or some person, well, that's bad. Well, it's not actually from this higher perspective, because again, we're here to be everything and experience everything. And so, it could be that that person that is murdering someone, they were murdered in one of their
Mm.
parallel lives. And so they're just experiencing both sides of that coin. And again, it really, when we start to understand that this is a game. So my Orions, what they led, the journey of thinking of Earth like an amusement park. So imagine we're at Disney World. So Earth is like Disney World. Like, what ride do you want to go on? Okay, well, let's be born into this continent and this country with this kind of political issue going on, and this kind of religion. And oh, okay, now let's go to a different continent, a different experience. We're here to experience all of it. And so there is no good or bad, even though a lot of people really, again, I know if that's a new concept for people, and they're probably going to be like, nope, that's not true. And I'm just here to plant seeds. I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm just here to share the wisdom from these higher dimensional beings.
A couple of things I want you to address that I find you've talked about that I find kind of interesting. I think it would be good to explain to our folks too who are watching. So you consider yourself or you call yourself a galactic ambassador. I want you to get into that a little bit and explain what that is. And I also want you to talk about, if you will, uh, the channeling aspect and what that what that looks like and what it's about.
Okay. So yeah, so as they gave me this title, Galactic Ambassador. So, and it's even more than that, but it's words that most humans can wrap their minds around. So ambassadors are simply bridges between two groups of people. And so for me, I am here to be a bridge between Earth humans and these galactic beings that are here. They're watching over us. We can interact with them. And they want us to know who they are. They want us not to be afraid of them because there isn't anything to fear at all. They come from pure love. And so, at least the higher dimensional ones do. And we can talk about the difference between the third, fourth dimensional ones versus fifth dimension and higher. But really, as an ambassador, I'm here to share their messages. I'm here to introduce people to them. And because we may actually within our lifetime have open contact where that there are timelines that exist where that actually happens. And so really helping people to understand them, these different races, species, and know that, again, it's okay that they are different than us. They have different customs, different cultures, different perhaps belief systems. And so the more that we can really clear out our own judgments of ourselves and of humans, because there's so many judging people that are judging their fellow humans. So if you're going to judge a fellow human, how are you going to have open contact with a different kind of extraterrestrial race? And even people are judging the way that certain animals look, like they're scared of them, or they think they're creepy looking or whatever. And I know now why I had to have the first career for myself as a marine biologist zoologist, because I love biodiversity and I studied form and function, basically functional morphology. And so all of the animals here, whether they're microscopic or the most gigantic ones on Earth, their form perfectly fits their environment and how they live. And so, we have to get over the judgment of how things look as well. So that's part of the ambassadorship, is just really trying to open people's minds to that. And then also, as an ambassador, private client sessions, as well as on my extended spiritual UFO tour, I lead people through journeys to meet their galactic family and guides. So I'm actually helping to bridge that connection, because, I can tell you, like, oh, this is your kind of guide, this is your galactic, but when you get to meet them yourself, that's a completely different experience, where then you're like, oh, wow. And you can get beautiful information from them. You can get healing from them. They, just like our angel team and our spirit guides, they can't go against our free will. And so we have to ask them for their help. We have to ask them for their connection. And so I'm here to help do that as well. Now, the channeling aspect, so that spiritual school that I grew up in was actually taught by a channel descended master, channeling through a woman. And back in the 80s, channeling, there was a big stigma about it. It was thought to be very weird, very cult-like. And, there were elements of my school that were kind of like that. However, more and more people are opening up their channels. All of us channel all the time. Anytime we're in creativity, we're doing art, music, dance, anything in the creative realm, we are channeling. And so there are different ways to channel. You can channel through writing, you can channel vocally. And so when the Arcturians told me, like, we want to start channeling through you, I had hesitancy at first because of growing up in that school and my perception that, okay, what are people going to think of me? Because they all thought that was weird. So I had to get over my ego. My ego had to get over itself to be like, doesn't matter what people think of me. I'm just here to be a conduit for these messages. And so what happens with the channeling, I'm still present, but my ego is stepped to the side. And I let them use my vocal cords to share their messages. And because the ones that I am channeling are all fifth dimension and higher, there's nothing fear-based whatsoever that will ever come out of my mouth and from them. They are here to expand consciousness, not to keep people stuck in their polarity. There are other channelers that are willing to channel the lower frequencies, and that keeps people polarized. And so really, if you're hearing channeled messages, do you want to stay in the fear-based reality, or do you want to be in the like love, compassion, harmony kind of reality? And so really, we get to actively choose what we're listening to, what we're reading, what is going into our minds. Because again, 3 years ago, they told me I had to stop watching the news, stay out of the media, stay out of anything political. Now, Ego Lisa still had, opinions about politics and equal rights and things like that. But now I know that if my energy is there, then it's in a lower vibration. And so I have to just totally stay out of it. And I get to generate a higher vibration for myself. We get to create what vibration we are resonating at. And so I have a happy little bubble here in Hawaii that I've created. And very rarely do I get pulled out of that.
Wow. I love I love that comment. Ego least. That's funny. So you mentioned too, um, and before I even go into that, I really kind of want to backtrack for a second. So channeling is a little bit different than doing what people call dictation. Uh, it sounds like to me, because dictation is where someone is actually receiving the message, but they're only receiving it and then reciting back what they're receiving. Channeling, they're actually using uh, your vehicle as a way to communicate with people. So it's a
Yeah.
little more in person, I guess, or personal.
Yeah. And
Okay.
yeah. And I mean, the dictation, that is still a form of channeling.
Mhm.
And there are also channelers who go into a deep trance-like state where they are not conscious at all of what is going on. And that was the case with my teacher in that spiritual school. The lady who channeled Ramtha was like very, like so far away, not present at all. And so we, the more that we are raising our consciousness and being able to run this energy, we don't have to go into that trance anymore, especially when we're clearing out our own trauma. Because what happens is, if they're filtering through our brain and we still have a lot of baggage, well, that might seep through into what the messages are. So
Mm.
really, for me, like, I have to completely be in a neutral state. I have to really raise my vibration to a much higher level to be able to connect with these higher dimensional beings, because they're able to lower their frequency to meet somewhere in the middle. And so really, that's how it happens. Yeah.
So you also mentioned, and I really want to get into this because this, like, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So you mentioned the differences, or you touched on that there are differences between the higher dimensional being, obviously, because they're in a different dimension. So can you touch on that and kind of clarify what that really means?
Okay. So, so how I like to use an analogy is, so we here on Earth, we're experiencing third density reality, which
Mm.
is very slow, very like heavy, dense. We experience linear time because of this, even though time doesn't really exist. And so if you imagine a fan with its blades and the fan is turned off, you can see each individual blade very clearly, right? So that's us as human. We experience ourselves being physical. Okay. You turn the fan on and the fan blades start going and it goes faster and faster and faster. Well, the faster that they go, you're not able to see each individual blade now. You can see right through. And so that faster and faster vibration is actually these higher dimensional realities. And so if we are operating in a third, fourth vibration, then something at a fifth dimensional vibration, they're vibrating, they're still there, but we can't see them, we can't perceive them, but they're there. And anything above that, we absolutely cannot see, because we are operating in this very physical state. So fifth dimension beings, they do still tend to have a physical body, but it's almost invisible to us, because unless we're raising our vibration, or they can densify and be seen. Now, things sixth dimension and higher are much more energy than they are physical. So they start losing, male, female, they're androgynous, and so they become like an energy body. Now, they can show themselves as something physical, like the Arcturians showed me what their form looks like if we were to see them as in this physical reality. But really, they operate in an energy field more so than like what we would perceive as physical. So we have different ET groups that reside in different dimensional realities. So yes, there are ET races that are third and fourth dimensional like we are. And just like Earth humans, they experience the polarities. So you're going to have, just like you have some Earth humans that are kind, compassionate, loving, service to others kind of people, we also have Earth humans that are the complete opposite of that, right? Now, ET races that are like us, that are polarized, you're going to have some individuals, not the entire race, but some individuals that are maybe more service to self. And we might judge that as malevolent or, a bad one. And then you're going to have other individuals that are the opposite of that, kind, loving, compassionate. And so really, again, there is no good or bad. It's like, what did you sign up for? What do you want to experience? We have free will. So if anyone ever comes into contact with something that they are like, oh, no, then no, you have the ability to say nope. And they have to abide by the free will. So even if it's not a being that really is malevolent, but you're perceiving it that way because you haven't worked through your own fears, and that's what happens actually in a lot of these cases. People are judging, their mind is making stories up that are not true about what the situation was. And this happens a lot in the, we'll call it abduction. I don't like that term abduction because it automatically gives a negative term, but the situations where people are taken. Because most people feel like, well, that's a violation against their rights. It's not, because you signed up for it at a soul contract level. And so anyway, but the more that we're holding our vibration in a higher state, really trying to achieve that fifth dimensional reality, then that's actually the frequency that we attract. Like attracts like in that way. And the things that are vibrating in a lower frequency, they cannot come into that energy field, or they can try to come in, but they can't stay there. And this is true for humans as well. If we're high vibing people, well, we're going to have high vibing people in our lives. Anything that isn't the high vibe will naturally fall away because it can't handle that high vibe energy. Does that make sense?
It does. It occurred to me while you were talking about that, and you mentioned our perception of things. One of the earliest cases of abduction that was highly publicized was Betty and Barney Hill.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing, what most people like viewing their case through the lens of what you're saying, there's several things that come to mind with me with that, but primarily the factor of the time period that they were in. Uh, they were an interracial couple during a time period where that was not okay.
Yeah.
So for them, their perception of being taken could be skewed easily by the culture of the time.
Yeah.
And so with that, this case that became very highly like high profile, very high profile, especially like during the 70s, it was talked about a lot. During the 80s, it was talked about a lot. And there was a lot of emphasis put on all of the fear factors there. I think what people weren't really seeing was that they were perceiving their experience through the lens of the time and the culture. And of course, they were having a negative experience because their biggest fear at that time was what? Being attacked all the time because of their relationship being not something that was really acceptable at that time.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of helped to shape a lot of our perception over
Um,
time.
Yeah, I would agree with, I guess, mainstream
Hmm.
culture. Yes.
Hmm.
Um, are you familiar with Dolores Cannon and her body of work?
I'm not
Okay,
actually.
so she is the creator of QHHT, which is a modality that it's a type of regression, hypnotic
Mm,
regression. And she had over 30 years of different people coming to her to be regressed. Some of them had missing time experiences, contactee experiences that she helped them recover their memories of what actually happened and to understand it. And I help people do this as well. And so the way that she was able to get to the very deep level of understanding and bring the higher self forward, and that's something that I'm able to help people do, is that they understand exactly what happened and why it happened, and that they actually chose it, and they understand it from that level, which then takes away all the fear. And so not one case did she ever have anyone that stayed in a fear-based mentality about their
mm,
experience. And so there are people who do this work who, I think they get to the nuts and bolts, but they don't get to the deeper, real root cause of what this issue is. And so anyone who goes through the regression who might still have fear around it, well, I would postulate that their person is not coming from a more spiritual perspective and understanding of it. And so again, we choose all of this.
mm.
And and part of the group, let me go back to Whitley. So when he wrote his book Communion, he was very much in fear of this phenomena for himself. But now, 30, 40 years later, he completely understands it from a different perspective, and it's no longer the fear spin. Travis Walton, Fire in the Sky guy, same.
Mm.
That movie, Hollywood, totally changed his story. But back then, there was some fear around it and he didn't understand it. But now he completely understands that those ETs brought him on board the craft because the energy from the craft had radiated his body, and they were healing him so that he could come back to Earth and live a life. And so when you understand things from the higher perspective, you really can shift the understanding.
Right, right. And I think that is one of the things that to me is very like I look at her perspective on a lot of things, not just this issue, but a lot of things, and realize that obviously media, for one, like you said, with the Travis Walton case, that Hollywood doing that movie really changed people's perspective of his encounter greatly because they really went for the fear factor in that movie big time.
They did.
They really did. They like it was
And it wasn't the truth.
no, it was way blown out of proportion. And it was even obvious watching the movie that it was like so uh, let's I I'm really curious because I've known people who did regression before. I worked with a couple of people who've done past life regressions. I did not have them do a regression on me, but we were working on other things. I'm very curious about how that plays into uh, your world now and your job, your calling with all of.
So I got trained 7.5 years ago to as a certified advanced past life regression therapist. And I was working with clients, and really what that modality, at least how I was trained, that modality is really to clear blockages and limitations holding you back, get to the root cause, whether it's in this life or some other life. We call it past, but it's parallel. All timelines exist simultaneously at the quantum level. So I'm changing that term past to parallel life regression. But really, it's getting to the root cause of something in your life, like whether it's relationship problems, financial, career, health. And when we go deep enough into the subconscious mind where all the answers lie, and we're able to see that original life or experience that created this, that we brought into this human life, when we are able to see that, we can make choices. We can either rewrite the script altogether. We can just understand it from a higher perspective and gain the wisdom so that it no longer affects us in this life. And then, so what happens is when you come out of that, it starts to rewire the brain to the new reality, to the new timeline where either it didn't happen or something different happened. And so even though there are people who absolutely will say, you cannot change your past. I posture differently. Yes, you can. And so what was interesting is over the last 7.5 years is that more and more of my clients were experiencing lives that were not of this earth. They were experiencing ET lives or being energy or, something completely different. And so, and I've had my own regressions done where I've gotten to experience myself in these other realms as well, which, I love. And so really what that kind of work does is it takes away any fear of death that someone might have. It takes away any like feelings of like, oh, I did that wrong, or, everything is a choice. And we can, again, we can recreate, we can jump to new timelines all the time. And we are jumping timelines consciously or unconsciously. And so for me, that work, it's incredible because people realize how multidimensional they are. They understand they are more than just this one earth life. They are all the things. And so, I love working with people to help them discover that. I occasionally will have clients that just want to do it like, oh, let me just see some of my different lives and not really get the healing from it. But I love doing the healing work because that is, I am here to be a teacher and a healer.
Right. Right. So let me ask you this in the time we have remaining. You had something that you wanted to leave with the folks watching today. What would be the things you would like to leave for them?
So really, and I don't know when this will go live, but we have so much going on Earth and in our country. And, people are highly polarized right now. They're highly in fear. And, things do have to change for us to make things better. So we're going to see things in our political system, in our financial system, our education system. Things are going to likely start crumbling, falling apart so that new earth can be built. And so the more that you can maintain your own environment, your own energy field by, instead of focusing outward, focusing inward and start healing anything stuck, those emotions, the traumas, anything holding you back from being more expansive in your reality. So really doing the deep healing work for yourself, then what that does is it allows you to come from a place of love. Love is the basis of everything. And so when you're coming from that love place, you're actually expanding that energy out into your community, into Earth, into the solar system, the galaxy, through dimensions. And so really, rather than focusing outward and judging people and staying in that polarized reality, we offer to go inward, heal, and then focus on what you actually want to create in your life. Try to hold yourself in a state of joy and gratitude, no matter what is going on around you, because ultimately you create your reality. You are in total control. And you may be I know I do, I have a completely different experience of my reality than my next door neighbors do, and even people within my household. And so it starts with us, it starts inward.
Definitely. Definitely. All right. And so, once again, just to remind our folks before we end, where can they find you online, and what exactly would you like for them to know about your services that you offer and other things that you may want to share with?
Okay, so at drlisajthompson.com or mysticmanta.com, I do have a free 20-minute meditative journey to meet your galactic guides. And so that's something that for anyone who's curious about that, you can download it and do it as many times as you want. And so, again, I'm here to be an ambassador. I'm here to connect you with your team. You have a much bigger team than you know. On that website, I offer my different healing modalities, my retreats. I have a certification program that I'm going to be teaching in February for my healing modality. I also am leading a galactic retreat here in Hawaii, April 30th to May 4th of 2025. And that's going to be a deep dive connection and really enhancing all your clair abilities. And it's pretty powerful, actually, what people get to experience on that retreat. And then if you're ever coming to Hawaii, specifically to the Big Island, then come see me on one of my Big Island UFO tours, where, again, we use advanced Generation 3 military night vision goggles to look at the night sky. And I train you how to identify all of the known moving objects, because airplanes, satellites, shooting stars, they all have very predictable behavior. So when you know what that behavior is, then you can actually see all the other stuff, the unknown, the spacecraft. And they do show up every time I'm out there.
All right. So I'm going to ask you to hang out for a moment in the green room, close this out, and I'm going to drop you out for a moment, close out the show. Then I'll be right back with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Wow. All right. I don't know about you guys, but that was a lot, and I was enjoying a lot of just information, lots of visuals going on there that was shared, and it was really good stuff today. So again, I want to thank Lisa Thompson for coming on. Enjoying this day with her was very powerful. Next week, I'm going to have a very special guest with us uh, to share their experience with cryptids. So I'm not gonna, I don't like to drop names on some of these big shows. So I want you guys to watch, pay attention, and check out the updates coming for that show. I will see you guys again next week, and